Well, Family Sunday, and now I want to introduce my daughter to you, Tori, and she's my family, and she's awesome. And I asked her to share some things about prayer. She's not only one that has even since a little tyke, she's always been spiritually tuned in. She's had some of the most bizarre questions, and I think I'd never have thought about that, Tori. I'll study that and I'll come back to you, that kind of thing. I never did come back with it, I didn't have the answer, but she's always been searching and always have had that spiritual hunger. And when it comes to prayer, she got the opportunity to be in IHOP up in Kansas City for a couple years? No, just a year? Yeah. After she had gone to college in Arizona and came back, and she went up to IHOP, and she learned on another level there, and she's brought a lot of that back with her in her heart, and now she's going to share some of that. So give her a big warm welcome.
Thanks, Dad. Appreciate it. Can I tell you guys about my socks real quick? Okay. So I put on some socks this morning, was going to wear boots like that come up to here. And then I changed my mind real quick. Didn't realize what kind of socks I had on. So these are not SpongeBob. They're actually Lakers socks, which would be great, but I'm not a Lakers fan. So sorry. Okay, so like my dad said, I had the opportunity to do an internship with a place called IHOP, and it stands for International House of Prayer. And through that experience, it was really life-changing, honestly. I had always wondered, as I became a Christian, closer to around 18, really having a deeper relationship with Jesus, I really wanted to know what prayer, like how do you have a solid prayer life? That and Bible reading were the things that I didn't really like as a Christian, just the two big ones. But I had mentors in my life around me once I really hungered for Christ, and I was so struck by their powerful prayers. And to me, my prayer life was always okay, 10 minutes, can I go? But I wanted to find out more. And so I got hooked up with IHOP, and they're all about worship and prayer. And so I decided to do an internship when I was 23. And it really changed my life of what prayer is. And so this month, our focus is on prayer. January and August, we do kind of collectively as a body kind of reset our focus on prayer. And so I kind of wanted to find out from you guys what you think of prayer. And so what I'm going to do, we're going to start off with 3 different images. And we're going to talk about just when you hear the word prayer, what image do you relate to most? And so I'm just going to have Logan show the 3 pictures. I'm not going to say anything. And then you can kind of view the pictures, and then we'll go through them again. So Logan, can you go ahead and show the first picture? So when you think of the word prayer, here's the first image. Okay, second. Okay, and then third. Okay. So let's go back to the first. Okay, so when you're hearing the word prayer, just the word prayer in the second. And then the third. Okay, so you guys have to promise to be honest, right? And you have to promise to participate, otherwise it'll be no fun, right? Okay, so go ahead and show the first image. Okay, when you hear the word prayer, you have to pick one of 3. Do you most relate to this image? Just raise your hand if this is what you think of when you think of prayer. Couple people. Okay. Now number 2. Is this what you think of when you think of prayer? Okay. And then the third one? Prayer? Right? Don't be shy. It's okay. Okay, cool. So this was really like all three of those were kind of where I was at with prayer. And like the first one, you see a man at business and he looks kind of bored, a little bit dead inside. And then the second one, you see a child and just this big sky, hopeful. It's like he believes in his God and all things are possible. And where are my prayers going? And then third one is like the stressed out woman, a lot to do, so many things on her plate, gotta pray. And so we're talking today about consistency in prayer. And I bet as believers, most of you guys have a prayer life, at least some kind of existence of a prayer life. But the part about prayer that is difficult is consistency. How do you keep a consistent prayer life? And I think, like I said, most of you have prayer lives, but I don't think everyone has consistent prayer lives. And I just want you to know that I know that because, Logan, can you show the picture of the last prayer meeting I went to? Can we look at all the people there? So, this is not to shame you guys and to go into more prayer meetings. Let's just be honest. Like, I have things that I avoid at church at all costs. If prayer meetings are your things you avoid, it's okay. It's okay. I'm not here to shame you. But I just want to talk about how powerful prayer is when we learn to understand the presence of God in prayer. And so we're going to go ahead and look at Romans 8:26, and we're going to dissect this first a little bit. So it says, do you guys want to read it with me? Okay, let's read it together. In the same way, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. We do not know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us through wordless groans. And he who searches our hearts knows the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for God's people in accordance with the will of God. Okay, so go ahead and the next slide. Okay, so we're just going to talk about this first little part. In the same way the Spirit helps us in our weakness, we do not know what we ought to pray for. Okay, so next part. So from there, we know that two things. We're weak, and we don't know what we ought to pray for. And I don't know about you, but a lot of times in prayer, I'm pretty sure I know what to pray for. So I have my to-do list, right? So a lot of times I approach God with my to-do list. And like, for example, I'm a video maker and I'm working on a short this semester. And so I have a big to-do list. I'm like, God, I need 4 actors, 1 musician. I need a location nailed down. I need a dance choreographer. I need to do. Or I approach God with a wish list. So I'm like, Lord, you know, it would be lovely if I could have a bigger place. If I had a little bit more money. I wish I had a dog. Maybe I could get married before I'm 45. Just all these things that I wish for, right? Or I approach God with my worries. This is a big one. A lot of times those things that are pressing on our heart, like, God, my little baby nephew is in the ER. I don't know what to do. God, can you come through? Can you do this? Can you help me? Can you come through? Please, God, please, 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 please. And so that's kind of what our prayers turn into. But if we go back to Romans 8:26, it says, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. So already if we come in a place of actually thinking that we are strong, that we have it figured out and we know what we're supposed to pray for, it's already kind of posturing us against receiving from God. Does that make sense? So even though we're not thinking out loud like, oh, I'm in a place of pride because, you know, I have all these concerns, I have all these things to get done, and I do want God to intervene in my life. That's actually a place of pride. And the opposite, if we're coming from a place of humility, is slowing down ourselves, is coming into a place of almost like how we came in this morning in worship, where we're hungering for God, where we're trying to tune out the distractions, and we're trying to quiet, maybe not the world around us, because we can't always control that, but we're trying to quiet us, like quiet our hearts, quiet our minds, most of all, quiet our spirits. Because when our spirits are quiet, that's when we receive. That's when we hear his voice. That's where we get strategy into the things that are pressing us and shaking our world. And so often our prayers are just like list and list, and it's exhausting. But when we come at a different approach and we're in that place of the Spirit, where the Spirit is quiet and we're hearing from God, that's where we're actually energized, because our spirit is connecting with God's Spirit. And that's actually, as humans, what we're designed for. We are designed to connect with God's Spirit. He made each of you in here to connect with him. And that's what prayer is. That's what prayer is. So, I don't know if a lot of you may be thinking of, how do I pray not so much with my mind? How do I pray for my spirit? Again, if you could show the picture of so a lot of times we try to do so many spiritually things, like from our intellect, from our mind, from what we see around us. But from Romans 8:26, we see that the Spirit himself intercedes on behalf of us. So it's like we have someone intervening for us and connecting for us, making that connection possible for us. But if we're constantly trying to enter into a place of prayer just from our minds and just from what's going on around us, we cannot receive from God the strategy he has for those things in your life. The words that he has for you to speak out against those mountains in your life. Or sometimes it's just like the small things that he has to, a word for a neighbor, a word for a coworker. Those things he's going to reveal to you, it's in a place of that quietness of the Spirit and not the intellect. And so, I was actually talking with Denise this morning about kids. And I think kids are such a marvelous, representation of how we can enter into things spiritually. I have a little 3-year-old nephew, and if you turn on some music, he just like does a little dance, right? And it's not like his mind isn't saying, okay, dance now. It's like, it's something he feels. And it's the same, like every human has a spirit. It's something you feel. It's something you can't necessarily explain rationally, but it's the same thing as when you were coming in this morning. And we darken the lights a little bit and we try to make it distraction free. It's that same idea of connecting with God spiritually, and ridding ourselves of those things that hinder that. And so if we can get into a place of practice with that, even if it's just 10 minutes a day of, it's weird, but I go in my closet because you can't have really much distraction there. But 10 minutes a day and just being quiet. And you could be the most quiet person on earth, but not have a quiet inside, You could be a very loud personality and have a quiet inside. It's not personality. It's that practice of quieting yourself, quieting your mind, your spirit, and recognizing, God, you're my reality. Even more real than the problems I'm facing today, even more real than that debt I have to pay off, even more real than that pain I'm going through. God, you're my reality. You're my reality. You're my reality. Speak to me. I know you want to speak to me. I know your love is here. And it's that place of faith. It's that process of quieting yourself that is so, so important, that if we miss that, our prayer is just going to be dry. It's going to be rigorous. It's going to be hard. So if we could actually, we're going to do things a little bit different in the message. We're going to practice this. And I'm going to have the worship team come up. And there's going to be, we're going to do something called guided prayer. So I'll just have questions on the screen of just things you can reflect on. And I'd like us just to practice where we are seated, of just coming to that place of quietness and trying to hear from God and trusting that He's going to speak to you. If you things like that, sometimes that's helpful. And then I wanted to share one more story as the band's coming up. So in Luke 10:38 through 42, this is the story of Martha and Mary, and you guys have probably heard this story before, but basically Jesus had come over with the disciples to Martha and Mary's house. Martha and Mary were sisters, and Martha was running around trying to get dinner ready, trying to get things ready, and Mary, her sister, was sitting at the feet of Jesus. And Martha was really upset that her sister wasn't helping her. So it says, I'll read from over here. It says, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Have you guys ever been there? Like, please, God, can you please help me? And then Jesus answers, Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about so many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken from her. So our priorities in prayer are not how can we learn to petition God for the biggest, best things He has for us. Though those things aren't wrong, and it's not wrong to cast your care on God. In fact, it's what He asks. The place of prayer should first be that position of being at His feet. That's where we find that He delights in us. That's where we hear His voice. That's where we sense His stillness. That's where we come into a place of His peace. He says this one thing is most important. So as the band plays a little bit, I just want you guys to take time and just think about these questions. Take time to practice quieting yourself. And then we're going to go into the last song.